project tracking in QuickBooks Online. Now, before we even go over to the Project Center, there are some settings to consider. So we are going to go to the gear icon, Accountant Settings, and you're going to go to first the Expenses tab, and make sure at least Show Items and Table on Expense and Purchase Forms, Track Expenses and Items by Customer, that would be Project 2, are on, those two. If you're not passing anything through, you don't need to mark it billable, but sometimes it's nice to have the checkbox there. However, if this is just creating estimates and you're progressively invoicing against them to close the job and you're not actually passing anything through, then you can toggle that off. I actually use the billable box as a workaround for change orders. Right? So anything extra that I put on an expense form or time or whatever, I mark billable to pass through to the final invoice, if you will. It's quote unquote like a kind of like a workaround to a change order because we don't really have change orders in QBO land, right? Just an idea. At least you want this first one on. Estimates are item based. If you're doing some job costing, you're going to invoice against it. That's also item based, right? So you want the items table on your cost forms to show costs on the P&L, project profitability, if you will. So I always turn that one on. And then of course we want to tag the project to expense or items. So you need that field on there. Bill check, credit card expense. So you have those two on at least, all right? In the advanced settings, you want to turn projects on. And for time tracking, if you want to make it billable, or at least add the service field to timesheets, because service items, you're going to be using them. They're going to be on estimates and invoices, right? You're going to want them on cost forms too. You at least toggle this one on. And then of course, look at my billable expense time video if you want to know more about that. You don't have to have billable on. I just keep them both on. Right? So those are going to be the main settings that you're going to consider with project tracking. Once that's all set, now we're just going to go to projects. And really all it is creating projects. This is a project center. It's going to list all the projects that are open. It's going to show the current profit margin based on revenue versus expense that you'll see when you drill into each specific project. It's going to show you the time against these projects that you have. So you can kind of budget that, if you will. There's no estimate to actual reporting like there would be in desktop in QBO, right? So you can do budgets and you can subdivide them by project. So you have a budget versus actual by project. It's kind of the same thing. And then you have some options here. Creating a project is just this. I mean, if you're using the sub-customer method for job costing, I do suggest projects because the sole reason of being able to finally have wage expense and payroll and stuff tagged to a project without having to do like a $0 check or $0 journal entry. But it's similar. It's going to be customer name, colon, and the subname, right? So you name the project, you choose the customer as part of, put in notes. Not as many fields, and that's how you do it. And let's drill into this one. There's a couple things to note. You have, within this particular backyard demo for Adam Saraceno, I have an overview tab of how I'm doing between income. I've probably invoiced most of this job. The costs, including payroll, right? There is no customer or project field on the paycheck still. We do it in the back end based on the time entry. And whatever time you have activity against particular project, we assign to that project on the paycheck behind the scenes. And then you'll see all the transactions against the particular project here. You probably start with an estimate and then you invoice against it till it's closed. As well, you can add transactions to the project from here, or you can do it from the plus new tab, either way. And then the project reports, right? You want the project profitability. This is your profit and loss already filtered by the project itself. So I have some net income of $8,500. I saw that just with a click. As long as you are tagging the project to bills, checks, credit card expenses, time, that then becomes payroll on the back end, right? And then of course you're invoicing. Then the project will keep track of the income against the project and the costs against the project. And then you'll have your profit, and that's how we, come up with your profit margin figure, if you will. It's just a percent based on this. The other report is time cost by employer vendor. This is an approximation report, a prognostication, what you can expect based on the cost rates. We're going to go over in a sec because you can have hourly cost rates per employee and vendor. Very important to set up as well. But I'm just showing you kind of the results of this so you can see that this is totally possible within QuickBooks Online. I have the employees or the vendors, their duration of time, the cost rate I've assigned to them, and that's going to be so far, even if I haven't run payroll, I got $3,400 in cost against this project, right? So this is kind of a WIP report, if you will, construction and process, time and process. Now let's go back to the main window. Two things to consider. In the upper right of projects, you have hourly cost rate. This, for your employees, not subcontractor vendors, but employees, is where you would add the cost. So if I go to Deborah here, click the little calculator, this is where we figure out her hourly cost rate for the project. It's pretty much the same, though, for every project. That's the thing. There's not multiple hourly cost rates, but you're basically setting a default cost rate for her regardless of project she's working on for the employees. So that's one way to do it. And this is where we start the process of assigning time to this cost rate, right? And assign it to payroll on the back end. Also, if you have subcontractor vendors, when you go to the vendor record itself, like Adams Clay here, and I click edit, right? You also have a cost rate per hour. That will also flow into projects, multiplied by the hours of time, right, to assign that. And that's how we build out that WIP report for you as well. Definitely set up the vendor cost rates in the vendor records, and in the main page, on the main page of the projects window, click on hourly cost rate and set up the hourly cost rates for your employees. And then you have all those settings taken care of. You created an estimate, things like that. Then you're just doing some transaction entry. Now you're going to be entering time against this. Like for Isaac, I did this for today. This is what he did. It's just it's a weekly timesheet, or single time activity is fine as well. If you go to plus new, or I can do it from the main project page and do a weekly timesheet, just like that, or single time activity, or of course, QuickBooks Time, right? Formerly T-Sheets. You enter it there. You can assign the project in QuickBooks Time, and that flows over too, to go with your invoicing or payroll, right? Or this particular project, right? Projects go up to QuickBooks Time, and the time will come back, right? So there's all of that too. And please look for a related video called QuickBooks Time. We'll spend some time there definitely going to that, because that is going to be more efficient than using the timesheets within QuickBooks Online. And like on any transaction, we'll also do some cost. Like we'll say there's a bill, or it might be a check or a credit card expense, and you can use categories if you want, or labor costs, whatever, or the items. The same items would be on the estimate. In this case, renovation, and I think it's an excavation item. This is the cost, and I'm assigning it to the project. I'm not marking it billable. I'm not passing it through, but I'm assigning that cost there, right, for this particular vendor. And that time entry for Isaac, how do we get that in there? Well, when you go pay the employees, we'll run payroll for last week. Yeah, we'll see the 40 hours there for Isaac. Now, even though there's as I mentioned, no customer or project field on the paycheck, we assign it. We assign this $451.83 to the Saraceno backyard job that Isaac worked on. So whether you're doing a check or a bill or a debit card to pay your vendors, or whether you're doing a paycheck to employees, payroll expense now is rolled in to the project. And we should notice a difference in the profit margin when we go back to the main project center. Right now I'm at 54.6%. And then finally, you just do the final invoice against the estimate, and go look for my progress invoicing video for that. And that's how you keep track, not only of your projects, but the profitability of each project using project reports, time in process or construction in process or WIP report you have based on the time. The time goes to the payroll, and it now shows up as part of your cost. And then you're invoicing against the estimates. I mean, you're just doing job costing. We call it project tracking in QuickBooks Online. You don't need to use sub-customers anymore, particularly if you want payroll to be included in the reporting. Use project tracking. And that is project tracking in QuickBooks Online.